folks, and welcome back to NTI's Japan Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Ziv Nakajima again, and this podcast is brought to you, among others, by Native Shark, which is an online platform for learning Japanese. And what Native Shark do is they make learning Japanese really, really simple. You log in, you click a button that says Study Now, and the platform then shows you exactly what you need to learn next based on your previous progress. Now, again, this is simple, but the way it's designed means that students who use Native Shark once a day for 4 to 5 months can complete the equivalent of over 2 years of university study. And this is not just them patting themselves on the back. Now that Native Shark's been in business for over a year, the results are in. So this is exactly what people are saying. Just looking at a couple of posts in their community forums. And the student community, by the way, is one of the best things about the platform. So one person's writing, most productive year I've had learning Japanese. And then another one says, I've started learning over a year ago with all of these other platforms, and what I learned there is only a fraction of what I've learned on Native Shark in just 3 months. And then yet another one goes, in my mind, my study timeline only started with Native Shark because that's when I really started learning consistently, and on and on. So yet the proof's in the pudding. It's definitely the best online course out there. And since you've heard about it here on the podcast, you also get an extra little bonus. If you sign up for their free trial using the URL nativeshark.com/NTI, and we'll link to it in this episode's show notes. So that's native without an E, so NATIV shark, all one word, .com/NTI. You use that link to sign up and you'll get a double length free trial. So 2 weeks free instead of just the one. No need to put in your credit card or anything of that sort. You can just sign up, give it a shot. And chances are at the end of these 2 weeks, you'll already be far ahead of wherever you are with your Japanese at the moment, whether you're just starting out or you're already in knee deep. Give it a shot. nativeshark.com/NTI. Okay, so right before we get into today's episode, as you might have noticed, depending on when you've tuned in, today marks my move to 2 weekly episodes instead of one, at least for the time being. Reason is, with our weekly Japan Real Estate Experts panel sessions, I've been accumulating quite a few recordings of other calls, mainly those mentoring sessions that I've mentioned in the last episode, business calls with clients, potential clients, etc. So enjoy the extra content, now coming to you twice weekly, yay! And, as promised, more on our business networking and board games event. Again, this coming December 10 to 12, Friday through to Sunday. So we've mentioned our speakers, Jason Ball, admin of Japan's biggest English business networking group, who's going to be speaking to us about building and maintaining business relationships in Japan. Mario Long, founder and CEO of Sakura Phoenix, will be talking to us about designing, creating, marketing, and crowdfunding games. And I'll be speaking about and answering questions about property investment in Japan. Now, I've mentioned the venue, Montan Hakata Hotel, and today I'm going to tell you about the food we'll be serving. So if you're from Fukuoka, you may know Monica Cabezas. She's the city's favorite private function chef. Originally from Chile, phenomenal cook. I've personally had the pleasure of tasting some of her creations a few times these past few years already. And she's blown me away each and every time. Absolutely amazing. So I've updated our event page with some serious food porn from Monica's kitchen. And if you haven't yet decided whether to book the full room and board option or not, I suggest you hop over to the event page. I'll link to it in this episode show notes before you make up your mind. I've got a feeling that you won't want to miss the chance of indulging in some of Monica's amazing dishes. Okay, so for today's episode, we're back with our JREP crew. One person short this time. Matt couldn't join us this time around, unfortunately. I'm not sure if he's feeding some goats or off to explore some haunted houses in the Japanese countryside. But Emil, Tracy, and myself had a nice long chat about a bunch of stuff. So mainly focused around furnished homes or homes and buildings equipped with some unusual features like a gym, swimming pool, sauna, etc. Then we sort of segued into dual-purpose holiday homes. So second homes purchased by owners who use them for their own purposes and then rent them out when not in use. When and where exactly is that strategy worth pursuing? We talked a bit about company dormitories or companies renting properties for their staff to stay in during work projects and so forth, and how that works for landlords compared with typical direct rentals to standard tenants. And as usual, we also touch on loans, mortgages, when is it better to purchase as opposed to rent, what to do with your property when you leave the country, awkward personal questions that realtors sometimes need to ask prospective buyers, and plenty of other good stuff. So good long session, enjoy it, and I'll see you again on the other side.
Okay.
I can pause it.
No. All right. So as per our new format, quick introduction. Starting from Emil.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm a real estate agent here in Tokyo. I help foreign families, mixed families, purchase their own family home in Tokyo. And we also help arrange financing. So we act as a mortgage broker. So any finance related questions as well, happy to help answer those too. Thanks. And over to Tracy. Go ahead.
So yes, I'm Tracy. I'm the CEO of Tokyo Family Stays. I'm a short-term rental expert in Tokyo. I cover all types of short-term rentals from rental arbitrage through to co-hosting, and I also own a few of my own, but I also help other people maximize their profits when they're setting up short-term rentals. So I've been doing this 10 years and I love it. It's been great. So I can help you if you're coming to Japan and you're needing a place to stay, or if you're wanting to invest and have short-term rentals in your cash flow portfolio. So that's me. Thanks.
And I'm Ziv Nakatimam again. My wife and I own a buyer's advocacy and portfolio management company. And we basically liaise with people like Emil and Tracy and Matt, who's not here. We'll do a third person intro for him, in helping them purchase and research and do due diligence on and profit from property investments anywhere in Japan, or to buy holiday homes or land for development or anything else that they need anywhere around Japan. And our missing member today is Matt Ketchum, and he's a co-founder and partner in Akiya and Inaka, which is a company that helps people investigate and purchase and renovate, if necessary, old, abandoned or vacant homes in the Japanese countryside. So we're the Japan Real Estate Experts Panel, or JREP. And what are we going to talk about today, guys?
JREP. This is new. I like it.
JREP.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we have like t-shirts that say JREP? We were just talking before we went live about gyms and how that first of all they're not very common because of space being at such a premium.
Home gyms, right?
Home gyms.
Like fitness gyms, yeah.
Home gym equipment. But there's a whole bunch of gym equipment that you can buy that fits into these small properties. So Emil, what's out there that work for a home gym?
Home gyms. Okay. Home gyms are I think it's a very personal kind of requirement, or very personal kind of equipment, because depends on your training and exercise targets, you will want your own sort of stuff. So I've always been into weight training, typical old school sort of just weightlifting, barbell, bench press, dumbbells, that kind of stuff. And I'm pretty big in terms of my size, so I like to lift heavy. So I've got pretty much a full setup. So I've got bench, like a proper weight rack, a full size Olympic barbell, large weights. They are quite but it's hard to find space in a house. And also, if the issue I think is if it's an apartment, you're definitely not going to be able to do like deadlifts. There's lots of thuds, lots of thumping on the ground. So you need to be careful about your space. I've got a house, so I've got it in my house, and when I do deadlifts, the house shakes. When I sort of like put the weights down, etc. So you need to be, you need to buy something I think that is suitable for you, and the kind of exercise that you want to do, but also be very conscious of the space that you have. Rooms. Yeah, well, neighbors. If the neighbor's not so, but if you're in an apartment building, then yeah, what's on top and below is definitely a concern. Again, because I have a house, I don't have to worry about that. I just need the width and the physical dimensions of the room to be adequate. But if you jump on Amazon, to be honest, I think there's lots of stuff on Amazon that you can just get to meet your needs. Unless you really have a large space, what's common in Australia is a very large, like all-in-one home gym, right? You know, those ones you see, it's maybe like $1,000 or so, and there's maybe multiple stations in one large unit with some cables and like a weight stack in the middle and a bunch of cables. That's going to be difficult, I feel, to do in a Japanese property. But if you just have some smaller weights, smaller individual exercise equipments that you build up to do the exercises that you need, I think you can definitely achieve it, because the space you're going to have is maybe it's a bedroom or a spare room or a study, or even the living room. Move the coffee table away, and you can just roll out a mat and bring some weights down, some simple, like, you know, dumbbells, etc. Very, very light ones. It doesn't have to be a permanent weight training space or a permanent exercise space. You need to duplicate it for, you know, the 1 hour a day that you want to use it. So
I remember when I was in my apartment, I was in a larger apartment, and it was a concrete apartment. I was on the ground floor. I used to skip inside. I used to do my skipping because the ceilings were really high, and there was actually enough space. And then I moved into the house, which is a 3-story wooden house. There is absolutely no way that I could be jumping up and down and skipping inside my house. First of all, the ceilings are too low. But also, like you said, the wooden houses, the 3-story, you know, the standard Tokyo wooden house it shakes when I sneeze, or it shakes when a truck goes past the front door. So I can't imagine it would be good for doing deadlifts. I moved all my exercise and all my skipping actually into the driveway, and I keep my neighbors amused when I do my skipping or I do my yoga, because of course you know it's high density living. There are people walking past all the time, so you know you just got to make friends with your neighbors.
Have any of you ever had a rental property where you had any kind of gym or any kind of like personal features that tenants actually found attractive? Did that attract more tenants, less tenants?
It's funny you mentioned that, actually, because I've just listed a property on Tokyo Family Stays that I'm looking after for an owner who's left, and he converted one of the bedrooms in the apartment to a home gym. So has the bench and has the free weights and what have you. But that's the first time I've seen one, and I'm not sure about larger sort of expat-y type buildings that have a gym built in. Often they'll have relationships with the gyms, or people have gyms at the office, or you know, Tokyo American Club, for example, they would go and use the gym there. But I haven't really I've seen apartments with pools, and even that's fairly rare. That's sort of very much the high-end expat-y type apartment buildings. But ones with a gym, Emil, have you seen one?
So usually homes and apartments, the gym is not a built-in facility, right? It will be it'll just be like the owner's individual items that he's put in there. So if it's for sale, they will take it with them, right? If they have like a training room, a bunch, like a bench press and some weights, etc., they generally take it with them, or they need to sell it. Chances that someone else will want that exact equipment is unlikely.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's quite personal, and even if the person does like training, the fact that they want it as a dedicated training room is not, you know, they'll probably use it as an office or a different kind of space. It's a very, very niche item to take up an entire room, dedicated room, when the cost of a room, the cost of space in Tokyo is so expensive. That's for sales. And even with the issue with rentals is if it's something that you leave in the property, then the owner needs to take responsibility for it
To maintain it, yeah.
as a rental. So, for example, I've got a property now. We were using it for Airbnb for short-term stays, but because of COVID and whatnot, we got a regular Japanese tenant in there, so a long-term regular rental lease. And we asked them, look, do you want to keep any of the existing furniture? Because it was fully furnished. Do you want to keep anything, or do you want us to dispose of it? But the condition is anything you keep, you be aware that it is just leftover item. And when you leave, you need to dispose of it. And we as the owner are not taking any responsibility for it.
Yeah, we've had a few leases like that. So the tenant would ask, oh, could you leave that? Yeah, well, we can leave it behind, but we're not responsible for maintaining it. And you're responsible for checking it out when you go.
Sure. So one of the items that they're keeping is the washing machine. Okay. And so I don't want to be responsible for ongoing maintenance and repair of that washing machine. Right. Yeah. So you say, look, you can keep it, but it is what it is. And if when you leave, you need to dispose of it, or you can, or any repair maintenance, you need to take care of it yourself. It's not the owner's responsibility. The only thing we're taking care of is the air conditioner units, because that's ours. So we don't want the person when they leave to take them with them.
We have had some cases though, and in Tracy's world, I think that's actually the norm rather than the off case. But we have had some cases where, like for example, if there's quite a bit of competition in the area from comparable properties, and if we don't want, or the owner doesn't want to reduce the rent, then sometimes the property manager would suggest to furnish the unit. So to put in white goods or appliances, to put in a sofa bed, like a folding sofa bed, a TV, a microwave, minibar fridge, and so forth. And while that doesn't really command a huge rent difference, like it might be 5,000 yen or $50 extra a month or something, but in cases where you're the only furnished unit in that profile, in that area, it can actually make a difference. You might be able to populate a unit a bit faster. And it also depends on location. I mean, if you're right next to a university campus, for example, it's a lot more popular than if you're looking at your typical family unit or what. But Tracy, in your world, they're always furnished, aren't they?
They're always furnished. And I often take over properties where the owner has been living there and then has been transferred overseas. And then they want to come back and use their own stuff and their own properties from time to time. And I mean, it suits the owner because, first of all, they don't have to dispose of everything. They don't have to ship it away. If they're going overseas, they can't, they've got to get rid of their fridge, their washing machine anyway, because they're not going to work in, whatever country that they're moving to. And it's just a pain in the neck. Sizes are always different. So that's why it's good that I take over a property rather than it going out to long term. So there's for those reasons I mentioned, but back to having air conditioners looked after or not. I've worked with landlords where it's been very clear in the contract. All right, the air conditioner was here when you moved in. We are responsible for that. So when the air conditioner has crapped out, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months into a 2-year contract, I've been able to say, hey, buddy, the air conditioner's crapped out. Can I have a new one, please? And then they have to pony up the money and do it. But I've also been in other places where the air conditioners have been mine. And so when the air conditioner has crapped out, then I have to replace it. So, I mean, that's one of the biggest.
You've rented a place and you had the AC installed?
Yeah, I've actually had a number of places where the air conditioner is mine. It is on the contract that, in this particular room, the air conditioner belongs to the owner, and so they are responsible if it dies. But in this particular room, it's owned by me, and and I have to restore the place. If I put an air conditioner in, when I move out and I give back the keys, I actually have to get someone and patch up the hole and do the rest of it. Like I actually have to have that air conditioner professionally removed as well.
And the hole sealed.
And the hole sealed, or it back to back to the state where I rented it at. So,
or alternatively, you could reach. I know that in our case, for example, we haven't had many of those, but in the one or two cases that we have, we kind of reach an agreement with the tenant saying, "Oh, you just leave it behind." So they kind of give us the secondhand aircon unit, and then they don't have to go through the expense of removing it and sealing it and disposing or moving it, and then we actually get a bonus of an extra AC unit.
it'll be on the contract who's responsible for that though. So
yeah, no, I mean, even
if it's been
towards
left
the end of
behind,
say the tenant is, let's say that on the contract it says that this AC unit belongs to the tenant, so there's no question there. But as they give us the notice that they're leaving, they've asked us, well, do you maybe want it? And then we sort of make a memorandum saying that, yeah, they can leave it behind, and we absolve them of the responsibility to restore the unit.
Yeah, I've done that before too. But I think the biggest difference that people will recognize when they come and rent in Japan, as opposed to even when you buy, white goods are not included necessarily. So fridges aren't included, washing machines aren't included. Air conditioners are, but there's no central air here, and I think people get a bit confused. When they're used to, especially coming from North America, that air is like central heating or central air is included. It's not here, and we use these, like you can see one behind my head here. That's like these silly units that are so inefficient when you think about it. But it's just the way things are. And you were about to say something, Emil. I cut you off.
Well, I actually like these individual units because I can just focus on one room and have one room really controlled the way I like it, rather than the large central units. But I think one of the points I want to go back on that you mentioned, Ziv, slightly is the type of tenant that you have, like putting white goods, being the only property in that particular profile that has air conditioner and fridge and washing machine, etc. I think for one-room apartments where it could be university students that don't have money to move these things, or they've just moved out, it's their first property, right? Their first time
living
living alone.
2 years, and there's no point in them buying anything. Yeah,
exactly. Like they don't have their own items.
Yeah,
right. They're just living in their parents' house, so there's upside for that kind of property. The property I was talking about, it's a house. It's a 3-bedroom standalone house. Whoever is moving in there, often they already have their own furniture.
Yeah.
Okay. They've already got their own stuff, most likely to family. So they don't need so much stuff. Air conditioners are quite costly to move and install.
Yeah.
So that's probably the only item. It could be possible that the other person had their own air conditioners, right? But often those ones are a bit of the exception because there's an installation fee, and quite a significant installation and removal fee. Okay.
It has to be done by a professional. Yeah. It's got to be done by a professional. You can't, anyone can move a fridge in if you've got muscle, but not anybody can move an air conditioner in and out because there's gas involved and all sorts of things. So you've got to be really careful with that.
Yeah, often the installation, and especially if it includes a removal and disposal of an old unit, that can come up to the price of the unit itself. So you're actually... You might be paying $500 for the unit, and then another $300-400 to have it installed and remove the old one, etc. But we've had cases with furniture specifically, because we service a lot of people that are buying holiday homes, and they'll be coming in from overseas. A lot of times we'd be buying properties for them from just like an older couple or an elderly single person, and they'd have a lot of old school Japanese style furniture in the house, and they are thrilled. Not having to move and dispose of that just makes their day. And the foreign owner who's buying into like a traditional looking old Japanese home, they're even more happy that they've got all of this stuff around, So we'll always get the question, like we'll actually get pictures and lists of everything that's in every room. And they'll ask us, please mark what you want us to leave behind. And it's almost always the entire list. Like the foreign holiday maker who's buying this home just wants everything exactly the way it is, furniture and all.
Well, Ziv, I could actually even, offer your clients that if they do buy a holiday house and they need someone to stage it, if they need someone to fit it out, I mean, this is what I do. I furnish homes. I can
In
source
Tokyo, though, Tracy,
in
you're in
Tokyo.
Yeah, we don't do much in Tokyo. We leave that to you guys.
Well,
Because no,
I can travel for a fee. I'm quite happy to be mobile.
I know, but we do that. We love to travel to them.
Mhm.
Because we should mention when we do the intro, or maybe just now, but because we deal a lot in investment properties, and because investment properties in Tokyo are not very profitable, the yields are quite low. I mean, the purchase price is a lot higher than the rent would be higher in percentages. So the yield is actually a lot lower. So most of our customers, maybe the last couple of years, we've done more Tokyo and Osaka deals than usually because COVID prices have been a little bit softer for investment units. But aside from that, we'd usually not be active in Tokyo. Yokohama is popular. Chiba is popular.
Yep.
Sometimes we get lucky in Kawasaki, Saitama, and Kobe, but not Tokyo and Osaka themselves.
I mean, I can jump in with some numbers really as well. Like,
Yeah.
you know, with investment properties, looking at short-term rentals versus long-term rentals. Like, you know, if you're looking at a commercial property with one bed with single, you know, small studios, you actually get a much better return. And Ziv, you and I have done the numbers on that on a short-term rental play versus a long-term rental play. But it's when you get up into the 2-3 bedroom places or single family homes where it makes much more sense for ROI if you're in the short-term rental game. So, so you know, it was really illuminating doing crunching those numbers with you to see that that the amount and this is sort of in the Tokyo area that I know. The amount that you can earn on a short-term rental on a small studio just is not the same return as a long-term. So that was really fun.
Yeah, and I guess for our customers too, like everyone that I've shared these short-term rental figures with, they were all like, well, yeah, it's double, especially for the 2 and 3 bedroom units. If you're talking about, well, yeah, it's double the yield that I'll be getting if I was leasing it out on a long-term basis, but that just takes it from like 2.5 to 5, or from like 3 to 6%. And they can get 6% with a nice and stable long-term tenant in a lot of other cities. So unless they're specifically your type of client who's actually got a place that they want to personally use, again, Tokyo, Osaka don't really tickle their fancy that much.
Yeah, it's a very specific, you know, you need it. Yeah, it needs to be a certain type of strategy, and you need to have a certain, I think, reasoning to want to do the short-term kind of play. If it's straight up a pure numbers game, then yeah, as you mentioned, if you know, you could get possibly, if you do a property outside of Tokyo, you can get a similar return to sort of what you would expect from a well designed and well purchased short-term rental in Tokyo.
So
but it depends on your needs.
Yeah, I mean, my clients, they actually want to come back and they want to use their properties 6 months of the year or 3 months of the year, and they want to come and use their own place. And so, you know, I've got one client, you know, he comes back every Christmas and every summer with his family and puts his kids in school and brings their dog and all the rest of it. And then the rest of the time I look after it. So that makes really good sense if
Absolutely.
It's more of a lifestyle investment rather than a financial investment.
Yeah, and
Tracy,
I guess the thing is we've had issues like, for example, in ski areas or places that are really popular for Hanami season, for the cherry blossom season, or for the red leaf season, the koyo. We have to explain to people that, look, if you're going to be using the property yourself all throughout the ski season, you're not going to be renting it out to anybody throughout the rest of the year. As much as you'd like to, everybody wants to come at the same time that you want to be using the property. So you really have to figure out whether it's for your own use or not. And if it is for your own use, then whatever little bit of extra you can make on it when you're not using it, that's great. But don't expect other people to fill in the dead season for you, because that's not going to happen.
that is exactly the reason I don't have a holiday house, or I can't find the financial justification for a holiday house. I like going to the beach during the summertime. If I were to, and I go then, we're in real estate. Anytime we go to any place, we look at the real estate figures. We go past the real estate agency, and we look at how much these properties are.
Yeah.
In the area, we see like just all their signage out the front. And we
That's
want to
what
look at
vacations are all about, checking out real estate, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like my wife hates it. She's like, "What are you doing? Come on." But my thinking is very much that if I have a house and I want to rent it out, but then I think I'm going to rent it, and then that way I get to use it in a holiday season. I save by getting to use it for free. Yeah. Well, there's the lost cost of if I'm staying there, if it's 20,000 yen a night or 10,000 yen a night, whatever I block for that period is money that I've lost.
Yes.
And so my thinking is, you know what? Rather than owning it, and managing it, and having to put up with it, especially it's not a place that's designed to be optimal short-term rental, a financial tool. Rather, it's a place that I want to be able to holiday myself, and then when I'm not holidaying in it, I get some money back, right? So it's not designed as a financial tool as much as it's designed as my holiday space. However, I think if I block off for 20,000 yen a night for my personal use for 1 week or 2 weeks, why don't I just rent it out for that 20,000 yen a night?
And rent something for 6,000 a night.
Yeah, and I can just rent my own place. Well, even if it's the same, just like, hold on, whatever I block off or I reject to have it for my own personal use, that's going to be a loss. I may as well just spend that and rent an Airbnb the same or similar property for a similar price for when I want to use it, and not have to deal with any of the management headaches at all. The place, and just like, and I actually just did this, like I do this every year and I get the same result. But the place I went to just this summer, it costs 20, the management fee. Look, the property is not so much, but the management fee and the repair fee for owning the property is about 25,000 yen a month.
That's a condo unit.
Yeah, it's a condo, right?
Yeah.
And so which is fine if you're not going to live there permanently, right? But for 25,000 yen a month, I'm like, hold on a second, that's 250,000 yen a year. I don't spend that much on it just for the times I want to use it. Even if I want to go 3 or 4 times, I'm not going to spend that much. So am I really saving by having this property and trying to make it, going through all the ins and outs and the capital investment I need to put in?
Well, the only exception is if it's really in a place that's kind of evergreen throughout the year. So, like if it's a city, if it's a metro property, if you're talking about, for example, Tokyo or Fukuoka or to a certain degree Osaka and Kyoto as well, then yes, you would probably, when the tourists are here at least, you would probably have somebody who will want to rent it throughout the year. Maybe not, at the exact same vacancy and occupancy rates, but there would be interest. But if it's a beachside property, winter resort type property, anywhere that's only really catering to a specific season, then that's probably going to be the time that you're going to want to use it yourself. It's not worth it. No.
Yeah. I find, like, from my assessment, it kind of becomes worthwhile if you use it really regularly, like, 2-3 times a month. Like, for example, for 4 months of the year or 5 months of the year, you're there every other weekend. It really is your regular, like, family retreat spot, not once or twice a year, which is kind of the stuff that I do. Because once a year we'll go to the beach, then winter season we'll go up to the ski resorts. If it's that kind of stuff, it doesn't suit it for me. But if you want a place that's really your second home that you're using regularly, and the idea of using it as just some maybe supplementary income, using short-term stays, etc., when you're not there, I think that would work. But if the idea is I want a place that's going to be a short-term or Airbnb, kind of investment, which on top of that I can also use for free in the during the holiday season, you're not using it for free. You're paying exactly
It's
what
not an investment.
the market
I wouldn't
rates. Yeah.
call it an investment. Yeah.
No, I mean, you say that, but actually, my dream actually on the wall is is that I want one of these houses that is a second house, that I have my stuff locked in a cupboard, so that I'm not schlepping up suitcases every time, so that I can, if I decide that there's no one booked in, I'm going to jump on the train and I'm going to get there in an hour, and then I'm just going to have my laptop and can write, or I can do whatever, and that would be my second house. But then other times to be rented. So in those sorts of places, you can only get the 6 months of the year license anyway. So so you've got 6 months that you can be using. And thing is, I personally, this is my personal opinion, is I really love going to the beach in winter. And there's just something about, being cold, but being next to the ocean. So that's my dream. So
the more flexible you are, the more that becomes an option, I think, right? Like, I know a lot of people that go up to ski in a certain area, a certain time of the year, but then they're saying, this area is gorgeous in the spring. Nobody's even aware of that. But if you come here in the spring, it's gorgeous. It's green. There's flowers. There's like river rafting activities that you can do. And, it's fine for them to rent it out during the winter, and maybe they go to somewhere that's not as expensive for their ski, and then they use the place during the spring when there's not that many people who want to rent it anyway.
I've got friends with rentals up in Hokkaido, and it's a good long season up there. So they'll block off maybe a week or week and a half for themselves, and then the rest of the season it's all rented out, and then they go up and use it in the summer as well. So I mean, it really is. There's so many different options. It's really down to, there's no right way or wrong way to do it. It's just whatever works for you and your lifestyle.
Well, for you and your management company too. Like,
yes,
we've got management companies
yes.
up in Sapporo that, that we ask them to manage an apartment like you do, Tracy, on behalf of a customer who's going to be using it on holiday. And then he's giving us a list of, okay, we're going to come for 2 weeks in March, and then we're coming for another 4 weeks in October, and another 5 weeks in December. And the property manager will look, it's not really worth it for us to take on this property because we can't make enough to just justify the advertising and the cost that we're going to be putting into it if you're using it for like a quarter of the year, right?
Well, the people that I know who use their properties up in Hokkaido, when they go and stay in their own place, they pay the property management fees because they're just not paying the rental. So
okay.
So the things like the cleaning they'll have a cleaning crew come in every 3 days and or come in and do a quick clean every day. They'll still pay the daily rates as if they were a paying guest. Okay,
so the PM gets their 20 or 25% of what it would have been if they were renting out the place. And
they just pay it flat. So the owner will go and obviously they're mindful of their property manager who is there to make a buck as well. So they'll pay the property management fees. They just won't pay the tariff for the nightly stay.
That's a really interesting setup. Actually, I should suggest it to a few people. Thank you for that.
Yeah. You're welcome. I'll send you my invoice for my consulting charges.
Please do.
I wanted to sort of talk quickly that just on that topic of we were before about leaving items in the house.
Yeah.
Leaving furniture and stuff and air conditioners, just to sort of just to wrap that one bit up. I think the idea is like, is it worthwhile leaving furniture or not? Definitely, if it's a short-term stay, yes. But if you're looking for regular rentals, unless it's sort of college student, single room type places, generally, no, it's quite difficult. Expect that everything needs to be taken out. That's why like a lot of people feel that it's wasteful and they want to, that's why they want to think, look, maybe I'll do short-term stays because that way I get to keep my furniture rather than dispose of it. However, when you really calculate it, think like, what's the cost of disposing? Because when we talk about houses or these 3-bedroom, these larger places, maybe anywhere from 200 to 400,000 yen a month is what the rental is going to be. if you spend an extra 1 or 2 months or 3 months trying to find someone that is willing to live with your furniture,
It's not worth it.
you're probably going to lose out more than what the furniture is worth. And then, again, is it whose furniture is it then? When they leave, do you as the owner get the furniture back? Do they just leave it, or do they take it and dispose of it? It's quite complicated,
I'd say
especially if you want a typical lease.
If you're emotionally attached to any of the items, that becomes something to think about. But if you're just talking about, I don't want to throw it away. Well, you don't have to throw it away. You can contact the local recycle shop. They're not going to pay, prime dollar for it, but they'll come take it off your hands and give you like $100 or what for it, right?
No, you normally have to pay them to take it away.
Yeah, the recycle
if it's
stuff.
old and disgusting, but we have been paid by them if it's good stuff.
Oh, the recycle shop? I've never had that. Had that.
Yeah, they just recently they paid us, I think, not much, just like 5,000 yen, so about $50, and they took an old fridge, microwave, and sofa bed off our hands. So I guess they sell it for at least double that, right?
Well, there is a massive trade on Facebook and Craigslist for various furniture. I mean, with the pandemic, there hasn't been so much in and out. Yes. So furniture is pretty much secondhand furniture is pretty much worthless because there's not a lot of demand for it. If anything, there's a lot of people getting rid of stuff. So
no one's moving that much, are they?
No one's, well, some people are, but they're moving from share house to share house to share house.
Yeah.
You're not really getting big expat family moves, or you aren't at the moment, not with the borders closed. So
long-term tenants that we deal with they're all avoiding moving if they can. Some of them can't help it because company relocation or what have you, but if they can avoid moving, they will. So we've got a lot less vacancies than we used to have, but when we do get a vacancy, they last a lot longer.
The company relocations always, I find it really interesting culturally, because what you find is that it's usually just the main worker who moves. And so family will stay behind in the family home, wherever that is. And it'll just be one person, usually the father, let's say, who move, and they're in a tiny monthly mansion, or so a monthly mansion, if anyone isn't aware, is just like a small serviced student apartment almost that is furnished, that people rent by the month. And that is sort of down to the funny laws that are here between short-term rental and then monthly rental and then serviced apartments. But I won't dive down that rabbit hole today. But I can do that for another session if people would want to hear that. But I just find it really interesting that Japanese families would tend to keep the family house, and then it's just that the father that goes wherever the company sends them. And I just, it just is not something I'm used to or have grown up with. But do you see that a lot? Do you see that a lot, Ziv?
We do. We mainly deal in singles or couples apartments. So the relocations that we're facing are usually just a single tenant moving out because they have to. But I think, but on a personal level, a lot of the families that I'm in touch with, like friends and stuff, this obviously happens a whole lot. But I think the main difference is, and this is probably getting a bit more into like workplace employment relationships and even family dynamics, but in Japan, as opposed to other countries, these company shufflings and relocations are a lot more frequent, right? Like you'd have a person living in Tokyo, and then you're not going to be spending 6 months in Osaka. The next 6 months you're going to spend in Fukuoka. After that, you might be back in Tokyo. They like to send people. Part of the Japanese employment ladder, if you will, is to send them over to different company locations and branches, especially with the bigger companies, so that they can experience the whole gamut of how the company operates before they go and get promoted. So obviously, especially if you get kids involved, relocating an entire family every 6 to 12 months is ridiculous. So it does make sense. And a lot on a very personal, cynical side note, a lot of the wives are actually very happy with that.
As a
I mean,
husband, I'm sure.
I'll just say that these are the people who have been renting my short-term rentals since the borders have been closed, right? They're the people that have been keeping my business going because, before the pandemic, I didn't have any Japanese clients at all. It would be all inbound tourists. And then the borders shut. And so it's like I had to very quickly pivot. And I think I've pivoted more times in the last 18 months than a ballet dancer. But that's who I've found is there's people who, actually one of my clients right now, his wife and kids are in Fukuoka, interestingly enough. And he's here for a couple of months, living in one of my houses, and he's loving having the house because his wife can come and visit. Whereas before, when he was in sort of small dormitory type situations, there was just, they're grim. They're not a holiday at all. But at least this way, his wife, when she comes, they can have like a little staycation in Tokyo.
Whether they're grim or not depends on the company, actually. Companies with a bigger budget tend to rent nicer places for their employees too. And it also obviously depends on the rank of the employee. True.
Well, I mean, maybe I should make friends with a lot more companies and say, hey, put your staff in my houses and for 6 months, because they're fully furnished, they've got fast internet, all the rest of it. So
there are property management companies that specialize in that, more on the monthly rental than the actual minpaku, short-term stay. But there are quite a few property managers. Like if you're a property management company that deals primarily in monthly rentals, and we do work with a few of those, then it's one of the primary pillars of their business is to access these kind of companies' relocations.
I pay a commission, no problem.
I also think I'll go, Andres.
I was going to say, put me in contact with them, Ziv, because borders aren't opening anytime soon, so yep. I've still got vacancies.
The two that we work most frequently with are in Fukuoka and one that covers Nagoya, Kyoto, Osaka. So if those areas are interesting and you got properties there, let me know.
Tokyo family stays.
No, don't do that in Tokyo.
The Japanese salarymen that I know, the office workers that get relocated, it tends to be more sort of 2 years kind of stint, not just there for a few months. And so I think if it's a few months, then definitely a furnished apartment or monthly mansion is an option. But most of the guys that I know that have done this basically just end up getting a typical rental, which they need to furnish, because monthly mansions are a lot more expensive per month for the company, right? So it's easier for them actually just to get an apartment, and that's where the guy stays for the 2 years or so. And also, they say it's like 1 to 2 years. It may extend, right? It's really up to the company. But yeah, they tend to not use the service mansions or anything like that. It's a typical small 1 room or 1 LDK kind of place.
It'll often be, like in our case, if it's the longer type of leases, then it'll actually be the company renting the place for the long term on a 2-year renewable contract, because they know that once this guy goes back to the head office, they're going to be sending another person there.
Now, we're going to interrupt this broadcast. I always wanted to say that. We're going to interrupt this broadcast to give you a quick reminder that NTI is now partnered with Mita Securities Hospitality Property Fund, and they're offering their mind-blowingly gorgeous Machiya townhouses in Kyoto. So there's 4 of them, each about 100 years or older, lovingly restored and renovated to modern standards luxury. Stunning architecture and comfort, all the modern conveniences, including your scenic indoor or outdoor bath, spectacular dining and sitting rooms, disgustingly decadent Japanese or Western style bedrooms, high-speed Wi-Fi internet, kitchen, outdoor decks, Japanese gardens, the works. Now, each of these homes can comfortably host 2 or 3 families, including kids. So anywhere from 1 or 2 guests and all the way up to a dozen or so. And you can rent the entire house to yourself. So no other guests. It's all yours. Run around naked all day and night long if that's your thing. Supreme Japanese style luxury accommodation. And since at the moment there are still no foreign tourists in Kyoto, these places are available for rent at ridiculously low prices. So we're talking as little as $430 for a whole week. That's right, luxury accommodation for an entire clan, 2 families or more, for as little as $400, $500, or $600 a week. Obviously, the longer the stay, the cheaper the rate is, but you can rent these for anywhere between 1 or 2 nights and up to a month or more. So perfect for a weekend getaway, extended holiday, workation, family reunion, company retreat, or even as a gift to a valued client, whatever you might have in mind. And if you book these through our website, you're also going to get an added bonus of 1 or more 3,000 yen, so that's $30 QO cards, QUO. Those are gift cards that you can use all around the country in convenience stores, restaurants, various stores, lifestyle shops, you name it. The number of cards you'll get depends on the length of the stay, but you'll always get at least one of these. So if you're in Japan, or even if you're out of Japan, but you think that you might be able to get in sometimes in the next year or two, and you've been thinking about spending some time in Kyoto, this is your chance to nab the best accommodation deal possible. So we'll link to the bookings page, which also has some amazing photo galleries for each of these properties on offer. Now, they all come with a fully equipped kitchen, but you can also choose to have your meals delivered to the property if that's your thing. The operator can arrange that for you at very reasonable prices. And if you can't see the show notes for any reason, just go to our website, nippontradings.com. That's NIPPON Tradings with an S, all one word, nippontradings.com/Kyoto-holiday-rentals. Or just go to nippontradings.com and you'll see the Kyoto Holiday Rentals option on the top right menu bar. Now, we are already taking bookings, so some of the properties may not be available on your dates. But me, the security guys, are super accommodating, and they'll do their best to find you an available property for whenever it is you're planning your trip. Get on there, book your inquiry, and take that dream holiday in Kyoto that you've been fantasizing about while these phenomenal prices are still available. And now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, that's that's a good point. I'll touch on that. What happens with rental? So there's 2 types of contracts. It's Kojin and Hojin. So Kojin means personal contract, and Hojin means a corporate lease. And how that works is either the company will rent the property, okay, and that's beneficial for tax as well. So the company will rent a property, and the tenant, the employee, will actually pay that rent from their salary. However, that's paid pre-tax, so they get a tax deduction on that. Like, they're not paying tax on that portion that's paid to rent. It's one of the benefits for corporate rentals. And some companies, even, like, forget about the relocation aspect. Even if you live in Tokyo or wherever and you're going to stay in Tokyo, some companies offer that as just a tax, as a employee perk, employee benefit, so that they can save some tax. So what do you do? Like, save about 20 to 40% on whatever the rent portion is. Okay. Of course, if you're a company director, not of course, people don't know. If you're a company director, you only get sort of a 10% tax saving on that. But if you're just a regular employee, you get almost the entire amount.
It's part of your package. You can only claim up to 50%. So usually 50% is contributed by the company, and 50% is contributed by the staff member.
Is that if you're a director?
Both, I think. I just think the law, and I'm not an accountant and I'm not a lawyer, but I know just with our company, what goes on the salary and also the Gensen Shomesho at the end of the year is that whatever the rent is, 50%, it's all paid by the company, but 50% is actually on paper deducted from the salary. Because you can't claim 100% for company apartments.
That's
so
a director, I think, isn't it?
It changes if you're a director, but also
it does.
There's a portion of, depends on how much your total salary is. There's a cap on how much of it can be rent. So 100% of your salary cannot be a rent contribution, right? So there are certain calculations for it, but for the most part, if you're a regular salaried employee, you can get a big chunk of it, almost your entire rent as pre-tax payment by the company. But that's got to be a corporate rental, so the company has to pay that. So when you do the lease contract, it's under the company's name, but the individual is listed as the tenant. Okay.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. The other way, the Cordian, the individual way, is where you just rent it directly as an individual, and any rent you pay is post-tax. So you pay tax on the income, and then from your post-tax income, that's where you pay the rent. So there's no tax savings on it.
If it's for work purposes, then the company is usually going to be your personal guarantor as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're talking about the relocations, but in general, I'm just talking about sort of in a general rental. Yeah, so there's the two types, Cordian and Hordian. Some people will prefer, like some corporate rentals are a bit preferred by owners, because it shows that, okay, you're employed by a good company, and they also see not only the individual's tax info, but the company's P&L. All right, when the company applies for it. So the chances of the company defaulting.
We will, like, if there's an option to get a corporate tenant, they're a lot safer, more stable, and they're not going to declare bankruptcy just to avoid paying some debt on the rent. Whereas individuals, especially the low income earners, doesn't happen as much in Japan as in other countries, but they've got no problem to declare personal bankruptcy if it's like a little. If they're running like a little izakaya or a little anything of that sort, and they put a couple of their people in units that we've been managing for them, and just stopped paying the rent. We had to kick the tenant out, and then when we came up to we declared bankruptcy, you can't touch us. But that's not going to happen with a big corporate employer or even a medium-sized corporate employer.
Yeah. Well, one thing to clarify is some people are like, they're kind of a sole proprietor, but they have their own company. And they say, what if my company rents this property? Yeah,
Me.
example, right? And but the owner of the property, when you do the rental application, we will ask, look, okay, you're the individual, and okay, it's a corporate rental. Your employer is renting. Okay, who's your employer? All right, we get the documents. Who's
you can't be a guarantor for yourself now.
Yeah, well,
they try though.
Yeah, who's the director of the company? You? Okay, how much revenue is the company making? How many staff? Hold on, they've only got you. You're the one employee. You and your spouse, you and your husband or wife are the only two employees. This is no different than a sole proprietorship.
An individual lease, basically. There's no difference.
Yeah, exactly, right? You're just putting it on the company versus someone that works at Goldman Sachs. Well, look, if Goldman Sachs is doing the corporate leasing, great, I'm comfortable with that. But if you as an individual, you're as a corporate lease isn't making me feel a lot more comfortable.
No, I mean, they usually do that for their own tax benefits, right? Like the reason that they would do that is because putting it under the company name makes it work better for them financially, but to us as a landlord, it makes no difference.
Oh yeah, I'm talking from the landlord's landlord's
from our perspective.
So just
go for it if you want to, but I still want a rent insurance, a guarantee company with that.
Well, it's interesting though. I have heard. So there's another agent that I work with. That she's having a lot of trouble finding landlords who will rent to foreigners right now. It's because the guarantor companies are just saying foreign name, not interested. I mean, these are people that work at the embassies. These are diplomats, diplomatic staff. It's been a real problem just these last few months, and a lot of that's because of the pandemic. There's so many people left, and so many people left delinquent bills, unfortunately.
There are quite a few guarantee companies that cater specifically to foreigners now.
Oh, I don't know. This is just an anecdote. I don't know. I don't know more of the details on that. But Emil looked like he had some information on that.
Well, I was going to say, I haven't noticed. I focus in sales, right? So more individuals buying their own family house. I don't do rentals so much, but I can't say whether or not recently I've noticed it being more difficult for foreigners to get the guarantor company to sign off on it. But what I have no, what I can say, which has always been the case, is renting is such a challenge for foreigners, right? Unless you're looking at the 200 to 300,000 yen a month upwards,
Yeah.
which in that case is common for the building managers and companies to accept foreigners, because generally if you're paying that much rent, you're more of a professional. Like you're in a more, how I say, your overall income is higher than someone looking at like the 80,000 to 120,000 yen a month.
Yeah.
Right. So often the company you're working for is also a bit more, maybe larger, more reputable, the nature of the business, etc. But yeah, it's always tough. It's always really, really tough for foreigners to get a place, that's one of the reasons I moved into sales or into I bought my own place. I didn't like dealing with that. I've suffered through it. I've had so much difficulty. There are always stories of, oh, well, my wife is Japanese. But when you apply for the property, the owner will see that, oh, it's a Japanese person, but also they're married to a foreigner. There's a foreigner there, right? And whether or not you have permanent residency, there's issues with culturally they may, we've discussed in the past, right? The owner, we can say, oh, it's just discrimination or blatant racism. But there are other factors that, we've discussed before that, well, what about just language issues, cultural issues, or just the risk that if there's a foreign partner, they may just relocate. Okay. It may be easy to leave to another country. And it's a higher risk that they're going to end the tenancy early, which is not attractive to owners. So I think because of this, that's always kind of going to be the case. It's difficult to rent. But for buying, we never have this kind of racism or discrimination to foreign purchases. If we make an application to buy a property, they'll say, okay, who's the foreigner? If I tell them their name or whatnot, or who's the buyer. If it's a foreign name, they'll say, okay, I say, yeah, but he's from this country. He's got permanent residency, and the only reason that's important is, can he get finance? Can this applicant get financing? And if this person can get financing, then that's not an issue. And that's the question that is the same whether they're Japanese or foreign, right? Even a Japanese person, what's their employment like? Can they get financing, right? Or if they're foreign, yeah, do they have residency? Can they get financing? So yeah, that's why I like, once you own a place, it's just the peace of mind, the comfort that you have is unbelievable, which is why one of the reasons I got into the sales side of things. It's just so much nicer being able to help people buy their own family home.
We have had a few cases where owners, especially old school elderly owners, just outright refuse to sell to a foreigner, like whether they're concerned about the buyer pulling out at the last minute, because foreigners tend to be a bit more of a tire kickers than Japanese, or because they just don't want their precious house to go to a foreigner, like from a more old school, I don't want to say racist kind of point of view, but some of them are like that. Not many, but some are.
Yeah, you don't get that in Tokyo.
I would imagine not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no.
Don't get that in Tokyo. But I do notice that landlords, if they're not getting the right tenant, now whatever that right tenant is, they're actually quite happy to let a property sit vacant until they get the type of tenant they want. And as a business person, that just blows my mind. I've got, other than from an outsider's point of view, that's just like, whoa, like you're prepared to let money, leave money on the table because you don't like the cut of someone's jib. Okay, your business, your, whatever. But I just like I said, mind blown. But fortunately, it's a big country with lots of different opportunities. So,
yes.
Rather than chasing down or getting upset about those things, it's just like, okay, well, next opportunity,
Stop renting.
there's plenty. Mm-hmm.
Stop renting, buy a house.
Stop renting, buy a house. Exactly.
Buy a place. It's just such a good deal. Can I do my spiel on the deal, like just the financing. Why the reason it's such a good deal is financing is absurd. It's absurdly good if you can get the if you're eligible for the home loans in Japan. So the home loans, you can get 100% or even 105% financing is what we say. So generally closing costs are about 5% of the property value. So if you are a permanent employee and you have permanent residency, you can get, the bank can pay 100% of the mortgage. So let's say it's a 80 million yen, so $800,000 property. You can get 80 million yen for the property, plus another 4 million yen, so 40,000 of closing costs paid by the bank. So your out-of-pocket expense is maybe like $500 to $1,000, like 100,000 yen, and that's only because the home loan is in 100,000 yen increments. So if the total you need to pay out is 84 million and 30,000 yen, that 30,000 yen you can't really, it doesn't fit the increment, so you need to pay that out in cash. But yes, you can do the deal, get the bank to pay for the whole amount. It's cheaper than moving. It's cheaper than renting, right? Renting, you need to pay, 4 to 6 months worth of rent to the agency fee and all that sort of stuff. Here, the cash outlay can be almost zero, and the interest rate is we can get like 0.45%, 0.45 to 0.7% is what the interest rates are. And although that's a variable interest rate, so it couldn't go up, it can go down, but whatever, even if it could go up, it's been like that for about 14 years now.
So I have a question for you, Ziv, Emil, though. So someone coming out on an expat package, they're planning to be here from 2 to 5 years. Have you done the numbers to see whether or not they're better off? Assuming they don't have an expat package where their company is paying for their, massive penthouse down in Azerbaijan. But let's say someone is coming 2 to 5 years. Do you think it's a better deal to buy a place for basically using the bank's money and then selling
What bank's
when they
money?
go?
On an expat package, they're not going to get the bank's money.
No, not an expat package. But if they're let's say they're eligible for they're eligible for either finance or even if they come and buy their own place and then sell it when they go. Is that a feasible opportunity for people rather than going into that? Because renting, if you have to go through the whole rental procedure, it's horrible. But so is it more interesting?
Let me change the question slightly to make it a bit more relevant, because yes, we always get this question. So the way you want to look at it is, how long do I need to own the property for it to make financial sense?
There you go. That's it.
Okay. Is it better to buy or to rent, or to, like, if I'm going to own it, how long do I own it for before it makes financial, and I sell it, that it's financially better for me, or should I just rent? Okay. And that's kind of irrespective of whether or not they're on a expat package or they're just a resident here. And more often than not, what we find isn't people that are going to leave. It's people that are, maybe they're single, right? They're like just a single person and they're not married yet. Maybe they've got a girlfriend, right? Or boyfriend, or they're engaged. And I think, we want to buy a place now. We want to buy, they have a certain lifestyle. They want a 2 LDK down in Azabu or Shibuya. And they think, but, they're going to have kids within 3 years or so. So in about 3 years, they're going to need to sell this place and they're going to need to upsize. Okay. So that's kind of a more common way of looking at how long do you need to own a place before you sell it, and then it's a financially wise decision. Usually I say about 3 to 5 years. Okay. And that's because, 5 years, I'm a bit conservative with my calculations. So I want to make sure it's quite safe, not really borderline break even. So 5 years is pretty good. And the reason I say that is there's 5% closing costs when you purchase a property and 3% sales fee, right? So just off the bat, if we look at extremes, okay, imagine you sell it after day one. You've lived there for 1 day and then you sell it. or you've lived there for 35 years, the full life of the loan, because usually mortgages are 35 years. You live there for 35 years and you sell it at day 35. When we look at these two, getting the camera. When we look at these two extremes, we can kind of think, okay, along what line is the break-even point? So if you buy a place today and it's 5% closing costs, and then you sell it tomorrow for exactly the same price, property hasn't depreciated, then, and it costs you 3%. If that transaction is basically within, the same timeline, the same period, it's costing you 8%. All right. So can I just use 100 million yen, a nice easy number, right? 100 million yen property, you've lost 8 million yen in fees, right? So you bought it for 100 million, like it's cost you 105, you've sold it for, 100. So you're down 8 million yen. Okay. That's how much you need that's your net loss. If you're paying the bank, so on a 100 million yen loan, the monthly repayments are about 300,000 yen. Okay. Most of that is principal. So it's basically 3 million yen per year that you're paying off in equity. So it's a 100 million yen loan. After the first year, it's gone down to 97 million. After the second year, it's gone down to 94 million and so forth. So basically, after about 3 years is when you've put down equity of about 8%. All right, the remaining equity is about 8% down, right? 5 to 8%. So that's why I say about 3 years. Look, and the property price is not going to depreciate that quickly, right? And so it could appreciate, but it's slow. So it's not going to be that much change. So let's assume that within 3 to 5 years, the property price hasn't changed so much. I don't want to speculate anything going up or down. But because the interest is so low, most of what you pay back is principal. So in 3 to 5 years, if you sell it, even if you sell it at the same price, you've lost 8% in fees, you've paid off, your mortgage is now more than 8% decreased. So you can pay off the mortgage and you may even pocket a bit of cash.
Plus you haven't paid rent.
In 5 years. Well, you haven't paid rent, but that's what the principal is, right? So that's where it's gone. Now let's look at the other end of the extreme at 35-year mark. Okay. Imagine the property is worthless. The building is worth nothing after 35 years. Okay. You've paid off the mortgage. You're paying off 300,000 yen a month. You paid off the mortgage. The building is worth nothing at 35 years, but you sell it for land value only. Okay. Let's say the property was worth, like, a standalone house is about 25 million, but let's say 30 million yen. The property is worth 30 million yen. So after 35 years, the land value has stayed the same, 70 million, right? So you pay it off. So you sell the property for 70 million yen, but your outstanding loan balance is 0, right? So you pocket 70 million yen. So that's the two ends of the extremes with home mortgage, right? You lose 8, if you sell it on day one, you lose 8%, right? If you sell it when it's 35 years, you've lost the building value, but you keep the land value. So you make 100% of the land value. Okay, so that's the way I look at it. And where that break-even period, I'd say is 3 to 5 years. If you think you're going to sell within 3 to 5 years, probably not the best property for you to buy.
I would add there that there's another consideration that maybe, Tracy, your original question doesn't posit, is you don't actually have to sell. So in 3 to 5 years' time, you can, even if you've got a loan, you can switch over to an investment loan as long as you're making enough money to cover that. And then you don't actually have to sell the property. You can start making rental income off it.
Yeah, and that's the more realistic strategy, is if you think you're going, so that's if you're going to leave the country. If you're going to leave the country, then don't sell it, rent it out, because we talked about interest rates are so low, and you've gotten a great deal. Then you can get your rental will more than cover the mortgage.
Yep.
Usually that's the case because interest rates are so low. It becomes a great rental investment. So although as an agent, I would prefer you to sell the property because we make more money. that's where we make our commissions. We'll happily do it we'll happily manage it as a typical lease, because that's what I would do with my own place. And that's what I recommend sort of my friends to do as well. Rent it out, you get great rental income from it. But the situation, that's only if you leave the country and you no longer need to get a home loan in Japan. But like my example earlier, is if you're a single or a young family, or like just a new couple, and you buy a place that you think, look, we want a 1 or 2 LDK right now. We're not going to have kids for maybe 3 or 4 years. But in 3 years' time, you're going to outgrow it and you're going to need to rebuy something else. Then you can't keep the current property and buy a second one.
Not with a loan,
right? Yeah, not with the loan. And we're talking 50 to 100 million yen kind of property. So definitely not the case. And if they can't afford the 3-bedroom now, then in 2 or 3 years' time, they're not going to be able to afford it, right? They're not going to be able to afford keeping 2 properties. So for people in that situation, it's like when you buy a property, if you think you're going to be here for 10 years, you need a property that's going to be suitable for the next 10 years or so, 10 to 15 years. If you think it's only going to be suitable for 2 or 3 years, probably not the best decision to buy. You're going to end up in a worse off situation. And generally that is for people that are, if they're singles that are in their 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and they're almost engaged, or they're going to move in with their partner, their girlfriend or boyfriend, and they think it's likely they're going to get engaged and get married, this is the one. Then that's often my question to sort of these, singles or unmarried couples is like, are you going to get married and have a family? And if so, what's the timeline? Because if it is, very soon, I don't think this 2-bedroom apartment in downtown is the best decision for you.
Unless you are from the get-go planning to then rent it out, because you actually make more money on smaller apartments. It tends to be more profitable than a family home for rental purposes.
But going back to the point, you can only get one home loan.
I'm not talking about loan. Yeah.
So if you're going to spend 50 million yen or 60 million yen on this property, when you have a family and you want to buy a 3-bedroom property, a 3 LDK or a house or a mansion, you can't keep this 50 million yen property and buy another 80 million yen property.
We should point out at this stage that Emil normally deals with borrowers, and I normally deal with cash buyers, which is why we keep talking about different things.
I think that's why I'm in my little world right now about people buying their own personal properties.
But I think we're just about to call it a day, guys, because I do have another appointment.
It's 3 o'clock. So
but Tracy, I do hope that answers kind of your question about what a suitable timeline is for owning and when the payoff, like the break even kind of point is. But
it was an interesting thought experiment. People watching this will are interested in in all the nuances of Japan real estate. So I just thought it was an interesting thought experiment.
It's a realistic discussion that comes up almost every single time. And most of my clients are young families, new families. And so we say, maybe they got one young child, like they've just had a baby or they're pregnant. They're about to have one. And so it's like, well, how many, my question is, how many kids do you want? Right? Is it just the one, or do you want 3? Because this property may or may not be suitable. And I've got 3 young kids, they're age 7, 6, and 3. So I'm generally a few years ahead in the family development cycle than a lot of my clients. So there's firsthand experience I can give about what the right sizing or what suitable sizing is, or what's too small or not enough. So
but it must be really hard to ask like a couple that have just got together and they're all in love and they're about so are you getting married and how are you having children?
It's always with like whoever's contacted me first, like whether it be the husband or the boyfriend or the girlfriend, whoever's reached out to me and is my primary contact. I asked them sort of discreetly on the side first if I know it's a girlfriend. It's like, okay, so is this the one? Are you gonna make it? I don't want to go in and say, hey, are you guys getting married? But no, I don't. I can't. I don't want to put them on the spot.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall when you have that conversation. So, are you getting married? I mean,
seriously,
you're an Italian mother.
That's a serious question. Like, if they've come to speak to a real estate agent about buying a house together and getting a loan, we're pretty much assuming they've established they're going to be living together for a good few years.
Oh,
right?
What's realistic is they'll do the house hunting with their boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah.
Right. But it's quite common that this is like. I'll ask someone, and sometimes they go, "Oh, yeah, we're definitely like yes, this we will like," because when it's right in their mind, it's not a strange question, right? But the ones that are like, no, it's just a girlfriend, are also very much like, no, we're not, no, it's just a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Like we're not getting married.
Why are they house shopping together then?
Sorry,
why are they house shopping together?
Well, like if your boyfriend or girlfriend is buying a house, like you go out with them. Like when my wife goes to buy a dress, I'm not going to buy a dress, but I end up tagging along. So it's just an outing together. But you know what actually gets a stranger reaction is a couple with a young child. I'm like, so how many, like, are you going to have a number 2 or number 3? And sometimes like, yeah, no, like the answer is quite solid. Like they've had this discussion before, but sometimes they look at each other and as we haven't discussed this yet. Hey, what do you? Well, it's a similar reaction, even with families. So it's a very personal relationship I end up building with these people. With my clients.
Well, on that note, this has been fun. We've missed Matt. Matt, if you're watching this, we've missed you, mate. And I hope you've been. What is he feeding his goats today?
Or bitten by wasps? Yeah. But that was what happened on the last video I published. He was being chased by killer bees.
Yeah. I miss his real backgrounds that change all the time depending on where he is. Whereas ours are,
And we should actually say, Emil, you said it as a joke last time, but I'm noticing a lot of views, but I'm not noticing too many likes and subscribe. So like and subscribe. This is not a joke. Like and subscribe.
That's funny.
Yeah. In my screen, I'm in the top left, but I don't know where this recording will be.
I don't know. Well, I've told my son, my 11-year-old, that I'm on a YouTube channel now, and he's just like, oh, "Mummy, you're so cool."
Oh, wait till he sees you on TikTok. We should get little splices and put them on TikTok too. We can do the dance and the lip sync. All right. Thanks for your time today, guys.
All right. Take care.
See you next week.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Awesome session, wasn't it? Huge thank you again to Tracy and Emil. I really love jamming with this crew. Matt will be back with us as well next time. So if you haven't subscribed to the podcast or the YouTube channel yet, highly recommend you do that. And again, on our event, flight tickets are slowly creeping upwards, and we also have a cutoff date for guests who do opt for the full room and board option. Monica does need to have her catering guest numbers fixed a few weeks ahead of the event. So if you are planning to join us this December for Japan's first business networking and games weekend, the sooner you book, especially for your flight ticket if you're coming in from out of town, the better. Now, before we go, we're also, as always, going to tell you and also link to our other sponsor's website. That's Hiroshi Shimizu, immigration lawyer and administrative scrivener. If you're thinking about moving here on a more permanent basis, or you're already in Japan on some sort of a temporary visa and you want to switch to a longer term or permanent one, or if you're considering setting up a local company or a branch office of a foreign company and you've got any sort of business or visa related inquiries, or even if you just want to find out what your options are on any of these topics, feel free to contact Hiroshi Shimizu. You can find him at japanimmigrationexperts.com, and he can help you set up a company, apply for any kind of visa, or just provide you with the best advice and extremely affordable consultation related to these topics. And he's already done that for many of our listeners. So feel free to reach out to him. Again, that's japanimmigrationexperts.com, and you'll be well on your way. And that's it from us for today, folks. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Japan Real Estate Podcast. Do share it with your networks, and please let us know what you think. So leave us a short rating or review on the iTunes Store, on Spotify, or just drop us a line in the comment section of wherever you might have found this episode. We love hearing from you. Hope to have you with us again next time, and until then, have a great day or night ahead. Yoroshiku.